Welcome back. This is Emergency Management Made Easy with Lauren, your friend. And guess what? This is class number 56 in our series. So exciting. And I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to see you. You're going to love this. You're going to need pencil and paper. When I say pencils up, make sure you have them. You ready for the title of class 56? Are you uncomfortable voting in person? Are you uncomfortable? Let me provide some historical insights for you. This might help you to make up your mind. For all those who are voting early and in person, or not early, on the voting day. We know what that date is. Quick quiz question. With pencils, with paper, you'll need them today. So are you nervous about the environment and all of the headlines about ICE, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, or other extremists? Voting defined. Let's go to school. Is an active choice that individuals perform when they formally choose among alternative parties and depending on the election alternative policies. The late comedian George Carlin once said, "If you don't vote, you lose the right to complain." Makes sense to me. So let's look at voting historically. Let's look at it. Jim Crow laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation, named after a black minstrel show character. The law, which existed for about 100 years from the post-Civil War era until 1966, were meant to marginalize African Americans by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, or other opportunities. Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death, even hanging. Black codes. You ever heard of black codes? Get your pencils, get your paper. The roots of Jim Crow laws date as early as 1865, immediately following the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in the United States. I'll give you that date again, 1865. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. Black codes were strict local and state laws that detailed when and where and how formerly enslaved people could work and for how much compensation, money, they would receive. The codes appeared throughout the South as a legal way to put black citizens into indentured servitude, to take away voting rights, to control where they lived and how they traveled, and to seize children for labor purposes, child labor. Before child labor laws, black children were used in the fields under Jim Crow laws as servants. In addition, different laws have been invented to disenfranchise black voters in certain states. Jim Crow literacy tests were eventually deemed unconstitutional. During the civil rights movement of the 1950s into 1960s, voting rights activists in the South were subjected to various forms of mistreatment and violence. One event that outraged many Americans occurred on March 7, 1965, when peaceful participants in a Selma to Montgomery march for voting rights were met by Alabama state troopers, tear gas and whips, after they refused to turn back. Deceased Congressman John Lewis of Georgia. Many protesters, as well as Congressman Lewis, were severely beaten and bloodied, and others ran for their lives. The incident was captured by national television. In the wake of the shocking incident, President Lyndon Baines Johnson, we call him Lyndon B. Johnson, called for comprehensive voting rights legislation. In a speech to a joint session of Congress on March 15, 1965, the president outlined the deceptive ways in which election officials denied African American citizens the vote. Pencils up. Literacy test. Black people attempting to vote often were told by election officials that they had gotten the date, time, or polling place wrong, that they possessed insufficient literacy skills, or that they had filled out an application incorrectly. Black people whose population suffered from a high rate of illiteracy due to centuries of oppression and poverty, and yes, slavery, often would be forced to take literacy tests, which they sometimes failed. President Johnson also told Congress that voting officials primarily in southern states had been known to force black voters to recite the entire Constitution or explain the most complex provision of state laws, a task most white voters would have been hard-pressed to accomplish. In some cases, even black people with college degrees were turned away from the polls. Let's move closer. The U.S. Supreme Court. Pencils are up. On April the 29th, 2026, the court issued its opinion in Louisiana versus Callais. In a 6-3 ruling, the court weakened Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits any voting rule or procedure that discriminates on the basis of race, color, or language minority status, to the point of inoperability. Doesn't even work anymore. This sends a clear message to the nation. Racial discrimination and redistricting is acceptable when done under the guise of partisan gerrymandering. The ruling has green-lit, which means the plan or idea has received formal approval or permission to proceed. In that, the destruction of voters of color's main tool for challenging racially discriminatory voting practices. This has led to a frenzied redrawing of congressional voting district maps. Staying safe and free from fear while voting. Before, during, and after voting, know your legal rights. It's never too early to develop your personal plan as we prepare to exercise our legal rights to vote in any election. Quick quiz question, pencils up. What are our legal rights as citizens? Well, my goal is to enlighten and educate you, as I am not assuming you know the basic U.S. voting laws. Don't shoot the messenger, because I'm going to bring it. 1. It is illegal for the federal government to deploy agents to polling places for the purposes of interfering with your rights to vote. You have the right to vote without intimidation and interference. That's the law. If you are approached by a federal agent, stay calm. Again, as a U.S. citizen, you have the right to be there. There is a possibility poll workers may have requested local law enforcement presence to support their election process. So they're there to support everyone. There is a possibility. 2, if you observe any concerning behavior during the voting process, your first call should be to the Election Protection Hotline. In English, 866 Our Vote. 866 Our Vote. 866-687-8683. In English again, 866-687-8683. In Spanish language, 888-839-8682. Again, 888-839-8682. 3, voting is our holding the people in power or authority to account. Make your plan to vote and let your voice be heard. Citizenship eligibility, a closer look. 4, according to the United States Constitution, non-citizens may not vote in federal elections. Federal law makes it a crime for a non-citizen to vote or even attempt to vote for president, vice president, U.S. senator, U.S. representative. 5, this rule is straightforward when the ballot includes federal offices. Citizenship is the baseline, major qualification for voting is citizenship in the United States. Okay. Everyone make an early voting plan. Consider vote by mail if your state offers it and request your ballot early. Mail it back as early as possible according to your state laws. Early in-person voting. Use it if you choose to. Check early for your voter registration documents months before Election Day. Update your address if you've moved. Be mindful of changed laws if you are recently married. Forgot that. check your status or your state's identification requirements or other official identification to take with you to the polls. Know before you go. Non-citizens laws. Non-citizens law. No matter what, you retain the right to vote free from intimidation. You have the right to speak languages other than English at the polls. You have a right to be there. Non-citizens are prohibited by federal law from voting in federal elections, and citizenship is a common eligibility requirement in state law for state and local elections as well. Penalty for illegal voting in federal elections can include federal prosecution under statutes such as 18 U.S.C. and 611. That's 18 U.S.C. and 611. And related false statement laws, plus possible state laws. For non-citizens, there may be serious immigration consequences. The exact consequences depend on the facts, including what the person signed and whether it was in error and what they call a knowing conduct. Knowing conduct. What you signed, was it in error? Errors can occur if citizenship states are misrecorded or not properly flagged or clearly confirmed during the transaction. Voter identification. You may show identification at the polling place or when returning a mail-in ballot. Identification rules typically prove intent, not citizenship. Identification rules typically prove identity, not citizenship. Although some IDs can also be used as citizenship evidence in some systems, which means to me, some states. Know before you go. State systems. States set voter qualifications for state elections, and their registration systems also run federal registrations. So state runs both federal and state registrations. Documents required. Individual states that require proof typically accept the following documents to demonstrate United States citizenship. The details may vary by state. The list can change through legislation or administrative rule making because every state has their own rules and legislation, and the rules may change. So here they are. A U.S. passport or passport card, a birth certificate issued by a U.S. state or territory, sometimes with additional requirements depending on the state rules. A naturalization certificate or certificate of citizenship. In some systems, certain tribal documents or other records that indicate citizenship, if state law recognizes them. Official ID with you to the polls. Take it with you. Know where your backup documents are, such as utility bills or birth certificate. Behavior. A calm, stress-free environment. You should never confront or provoke anyone you see at the polls, even if they appear threatening. Never escalate tension at a polling place. Instead, call the Election Protection Hotline. 866-OUR-VOTE. 866-OUR-VOTE. Afterwards, try to seek out an official election worker on site. Quickly identify the local election workers who run the polling place. There are strict laws governing everyone's behavior within what is called the electioneering perimeter in some states, which can be anywhere within 600 feet from the door of the polling place. It is especially important to remain calm, keep your distance from any conflict, and seek guidance from official election workers if you need help. Safety in numbers. Consider bringing relatives or friends with you to the polling place, especially if you have a disability or special need. Please stay safe, everyone. I ask that you share this video with your children and young adults. In many schools in the United States right now, civics classes are no longer offered. Quick quiz question. Did you know if you travel in other countries, the Uber or taxi driver in Italy, Africa, France can share their country's history with you? They know their history. In the U.S., civics classes in many states have been removed. Wonder why? Because what we just discussed is civics and law. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just here to enlighten, inform, and love. I will talk with you. If not next week, the week after. Stay frosty.